All right, let's jump right in. We've got a really fascinating deep dive ahead of us today.
Yeah, this is going to be good.
We're tackling the future of work in America.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, how automation and AI, yeah, even that buzzy generative AI everyone's talking about,
Yeah.
are going to shake things up by 2030.
Right.
Our listener sent over this in-depth report from the McKinsey Global Institute,
Mm-hmm.
plus a few other related articles.
Yeah.
And honestly, with all the federal investments happening in these areas, who wouldn't want a glimpse into what jobs will look like in the next few years?
Absolutely. I think what's really interesting about this McKinsey report, though, is that it's not just about, like, robots taking everyone's jobs. It's about how the actual skills we need are gonna have to evolve. And it even gets into some kind of surprising demographic trends that I think are gonna really resonate with our listener.
For sure. Okay, so to set the stage, let's rewind a bit back to the post-pandemic world.
Right.
Remember the Great Resignation?
Oh, yeah. Everybody was talking about that.
It was everywhere. Well, this report actually calls it the Great Attrition.
The Great Attrition, yeah.
And they've got some pretty compelling numbers to explain why.
They do. Between 2019 and 2022,
Okay.
a huge number, like 8.6 million workers in the U.S.
Whoa.
They didn't just switch companies, they actually changed their entire occupations.
8.6 million people.
Yeah.
That is a seismic shift. So what exactly were people leaving behind and where were they headed?
Well, a lot of folks leaving were in those roles that got really hammered by the pandemic.
Yeah, makes sense.
Think food service, customer service, office support, those areas where lockdowns and restrictions really hit hard.
Yeah, those are tough times. But
Yeah.
with that many people switching careers, there had to be jobs opening up somewhere, right?
Right. The report shows a pretty significant jump in people moving into managerial roles, business, and those STEM fields.
STEM. Always hot.
Always. And those were areas already growing before the pandemic, and they were a lot more resilient to the disruptions, especially with the whole rise of remote work. And even then, it was clear, that tech skills were becoming more and more crucial.
Yeah.
And actually, this kind of foreshadows some of the bigger trends we're going to be looking at about the future of work and the types of work that'll be most in demand in the years ahead.
Okay, so speaking of those trends, this McKinsey report doesn't actually predict overall job numbers,
Yeah.
which I found kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Instead, it looks at how the types of jobs are going to change. So it's less about jobs disappearing altogether and more about this shift in the skills needed, right?
Exactly. It's not just about jobs going away. It's about the tasks within jobs changing and therefore the skills you need to do them.
So we should all be thinking about continuous learning and upskilling no matter what we do.
Exactly. And that headline number here is pretty significant. By 2030, we could see another 12 million occupational transitions.
12 million.
Yeah.
Whoa.
On top of the 8.6 million we just talked about.
So wait, hold on. What does a number like that actually mean for, someone listening to this?
Basically, it means that even if you think your job is safe,
Right.
what you do in that job is almost definitely going to change. Like lifelong learning, it's not just this nice idea anymore.
Yeah.
It's really the key to staying relevant, staying competitive. You've got to be ready to adapt and keep learning new things throughout your career.
So it's not just find a job, done.
Yeah.
It's find a job and constantly be evolving within that job.
Exactly.
Be prepared to learn because who knows what's coming next. And that brings us to the million-dollar question. Which fields are going to be the winners and which are going to be the losers in this whole future job market?
Right.
Where are the jobs going to be?
Well, let's start with those fields that are predicted to see some major growth.
Okay.
Healthcare is going to be booming. Like we're talking a 30% projected growth in both professional healthcare roles, doctors, nurses, and also all those aide and technician positions.
30%. That's
Yeah.
huge. So what's driving that kind of growth?
Well, a big part of it is the aging population, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
As people live longer, we're going to need more and more healthcare services.
Makes sense.
And it's not just about the number of jobs. It's also about, the skills needed to actually succeed in those jobs. And we'll get back to those skills in a bit.
So if anyone's listening and they're thinking about, future careers,
Right.
healthcare seems like a pretty good bet. But what other fields are showing that kind of that strong growth potential?
STEM fields are another big one.
Yeah.
We're talking about a 23% projected increase in STEM jobs by 2030.
23%. We keep hearing about all these tech layoffs in the news.
Right, right.
But it seems like in the long term, demand for those skills is only going up.
Yeah, exactly. Because, every industry is becoming more tech-driven these days. So anyone with STEM expertise, they're going to be in high demand.
Right.
And it's not just about coding or software development either.
Right.
It's data analysis, cybersecurity, AI, the whole gamut.
Okay. Healthcare, STEM, those are looking pretty good. What about construction? I mean, with all this spending on infrastructure, I think there'd be a ton of jobs there.
Yeah, you're right. Construction is also expected to grow.
Okay.
But here's the thing. It's already facing a shortage of skilled workers.
It is.
Yeah, so the competition for those jobs, it's going to be intense. And this actually highlights another trend. Even those traditionally blue-collar jobs are requiring more and more tech skills these days.
That's a good point. It's like no matter what you do, having some tech fluency is becoming essential.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about healthcare, STEM, construction. Those are all looking up. But it wouldn't be a proper deep dive if we didn't also look at the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
Right? Which fields are expected to see the biggest drops by 2030? Where are the jobs that might, start to disappear?
Yeah, their report highlights some areas that, honestly, you might expect.
Okay.
Like office support roles, customer service positions, and food service jobs.
Yeah, those are all areas where we're already seeing a lot of automation happening.
Exactly. Like, think about it. We're already interacting with chatbots and self-checkout kiosks all the time.
It's true. It's true.
And the report predicts some pretty significant declines in those areas.
Like how much are we talking?
Well, they say clerical jobs could decrease by 1.6 million.
Wow.
Retail salesperson positions by 830,000. Cashier jobs by 630,000.
Okay. Yeah, those numbers are pretty sobering.
Yeah.
But I guess it really highlights what we were just saying about the need to adapt and be proactive. If you're in one of these fields, now's the time to start thinking about what else you might want to be doing. What other skills you might want to learn.
Absolutely. And it's also important to keep in mind that even within those fields that are declining, the nature of the work itself might change rather than disappear entirely.
Okay.
For example, let's take a look at manufacturing.
Manufacturing. I always thought that was the poster child for jobs lost to automation, or jobs moving overseas.
Right, right.
But is it really that simple?
Well, it's more nuanced than that. The report actually shows that manufacturing overall is growing in the U.S.
Interesting.
But the types of jobs within manufacturing, they're definitely shifting.
Okay, so how is it changing?
So we're seeing fewer production roles, like those assembly line jobs, and more emphasis on tech and engineering positions within the sector.
So it's not just robots taking over the factory floor. It's more like humans needing to work with the technology in new and different ways.
Exactly. And this shift towards a more tech-driven manufacturing sector, it just highlights, again, how important adaptability and continuous learning really are. And speaking of those tech advancements, I think we need to address the elephant in the room here. Generative AI.
Oh, yeah. Generative AI, it's everywhere these days.
It really is.
It's like every day there's a new article about it, a new breakthrough.
Yeah.
It's changing things so fast. But for those who maybe aren't totally familiar with it, can you give us that quick elevator pitch? What exactly is it? And why is everyone so excited or maybe even a little bit terrified of it?
Well, generative AI, it refers to this type of artificial intelligence that can create new content, new stuff.
Like what kind of stuff?
Oh, all kinds of stuff. Like ChatGPT is the probably the most famous example right now.
Yeah, everyone's talking about ChatGPT.
It is. It can write text, translate languages, even write different kinds of creative content, poems. But there are other types of generative AI that can create images, videos, music, you name it.
It really is mind-blowing how quickly this tech is developing. It seems like all those predictions from even a few years ago, they're already outdated.
I know, right? Like the speed of development is incredible.
Yeah.
And even this report, the McKinsey report, they say that generative AI could increase the potential for automation in current jobs from 21.5% to 29.5% by 2030.
Okay, hold on. 29.5%. It's a huge jump.
It is.
But I guess it's important to remember that this is just about potential, right?
Right.
Just because something can be automated doesn't necessarily mean it will be.
Absolutely. There are a lot of other factors that come into play, like economic feasibility,
Yeah, too.
regulations, will governments allow it, social
Mhm.
acceptance, do people even want this?
Yeah.
And even things like cybersecurity concerns.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other can of worms.
It is.
Yeah.
So, it's not as simple as, oh, the robots are coming for all our jobs.
Right.
But it is a wake-up call to pay attention and be proactive about adapting to all these changes.
Okay, yeah. Adapt or become obsolete. Right.
Pretty much.
So that brings us to a really important question. If automation is going to reshape the workforce like this, who is most vulnerable? Is it going to be like a level playing field? Or are certain groups going to be more impacted than others?
This is where things get really interesting and where the report's findings get really personal, honestly.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Because they don't just look at, jobs in isolation.
Right.
They actually overlay that potential for automation with who is actually doing those jobs right now.
Okay.
And what they found is that, the impact, it's not going to be evenly spread.
It's not.
No, certain
Yeah.
demographics, they're much more at risk.
So let's break that down. Who, according to this report, is the most vulnerable?
Well, one of the most surprising findings was that workers in the second lowest wage quintile,
Okay.
so those folks earning between $30,800 and $38,200 a year. Okay.
They're actually 14 times more likely to need to change occupations
Wow, 14 times.
than those in that highest earning bracket.
That's wild. You'd think it'd be the other way around.
You would think so. But
Yeah.
it turns out those in the lowest earning bracket, they're often already in those jobs that are like heavily manual,
Okay.
or they require very specific physical skills, things that are actually still pretty hard to automate.
I hadn't thought of that. So what kinds of jobs are we talking about?
Like, home health aides or certain agricultural jobs.
Okay.
But that second quintile, it often includes a lot of those routine office jobs,
Yeah.
data entry, customer service roles.
Right.
Those jobs where technology is already making big inroads.
So it's not just about like your income level. It's about the specific type of work you do
Exactly.
and how susceptible that work is to being automated.
And how easily a machine can learn to do what you do.
Right. So what other factors make someone more vulnerable to these kinds of shifts?
Well, education's a big one.
The report found that workers without college degrees are 1.7 times more likely to be displaced than those who have a bachelor's degree or higher.
So a college degree is becoming like the new baseline.
It's looking more and more that way, but we also have to acknowledge that, not everyone has equal access to higher education,
Right.
which makes this whole issue even more complicated.
Yeah, for sure. And unfortunately, there are gender disparities too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, women are already underrepresented in a lot of fields.
Yeah, and the report actually found that women are 1.5 times more likely to face occupational transitions than men.
Why is that?
Well, it's largely because those shrinking occupations that we talked about,
Right.
like those office support and customer service roles,
Yeah,
they're disproportionately held by women.
that's a good point. It's a reminder that these changes, these big sweeping changes in the workforce, they're going to have a very real impact on different groups of people in very different ways.
Absolutely.
Were there any other demographic trends that really stood out to you in this report?
Yeah, there were definitely racial disparities as well.
Right.
Hispanic and Black workers, they're disproportionately represented in those shrinking fields we talked about.
Right.
Customer service, food service, production work.
Yeah.
And this really points to the need for more targeted support and training initiatives,
Yeah.
to make sure that everybody has an equal chance to succeed in this new and changing economy. It's not just about adapting to technology. It's about addressing these existing systemic inequalities that are already out there.
Right. It's about creating a future of work that works for everyone, not just a select few.
Exactly. And while we've been focusing on, the potential challenges, the disruptions, all that,
Yeah, it's been a little doom and gloom so far.
it has. It's important to remember that this period of change, it also presents some incredible opportunities.
Oh, okay, good. So it's not all bad news.
Not at all. For one thing, the decline in those lower wage jobs, it could actually lead to the U.S. economy shifting towards higher paying jobs.
Okay, that would be good.
It would. But there's a catch, of course.
There's always a catch. What is it?
This will only happen if the right skills are developed.
So it's like a challenge and an opportunity wrapped up in one.
Exactly. This time of change, yeah, it's going to be disruptive. There's no doubt about that. But it has the potential to create a more inclusive economy with higher productivity and better wages if we handle it right.
Okay. So big if there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those right skills. What are we talking about here?
Well, the report highlights this really fascinating and maybe even surprising combination. The two skill sets that are going to see the biggest increase in demand
Okay, hit me with it.
are social emotional skills and technological skills.
Wait, really? Both? I wouldn't have thought those would go together.
I know, right? It's not what you'd expect.
So it's not enough to just, like, learn to code.
Mm.
You also have to be a people person.
It's about the whole package. And when you think about it, it makes sense.
Okay, explain it to me.
Even those jobs we traditionally think of as people-oriented, like healthcare, education, sales,
Yeah.
those are all becoming more and more reliant on technology.
Right. So, like, with healthcare, we talked about all those jobs opening up, but
Sure.
how do those specific skills, those social, emotional, and technological, how do they play out in a field like that?
Well, think about what makes someone good at healthcare.
Okay.
It's not just about, having the technical expertise.
Right.
It's about empathy, compassion, that ability to build trust and rapport with patients.
Yeah, especially patients who might be going through, like, really difficult or scary stuff.
Exactly. No robot, no matter how advanced, can replace that human connection.
That's true.
But at the same time, healthcare is becoming increasingly digital.
Right.
We've got electronic health records, telemedicine platforms, remote monitoring devices, all this stuff.
It's like healthcare is getting a tech makeover.
It is. And so healthcare professionals, they need to be tech savvy. They need to know how to use all these tools effectively to provide really good care.
So it's like this interesting balance, right? You need that human touch and you need to be comfortable with technology.
Exactly. And that's not just in healthcare. Think about sales.
Okay. Yeah.
Always been a people-oriented profession.
Right, for sure.
But now it's becoming so data-driven.
Yeah.
Salespeople, they have to be comfortable with online marketing platforms, with social media analytics, customer relationship management systems.
A whole new set of skills on top of, like, your classic sales skills.
It is. And even fields like manufacturing, which we think of as being, right on the front lines of automation.
Yeah.
Even those jobs are seeing this growing demand for that combination of skills.
What do you mean? Like, what kind of people skills would you even need in a factory full of robots?
Well, think about the engineers and technicians who are, designing those robots, building them, maintaining them.
Okay. Yeah.
They need those strong technical skills, obviously.
Right.
But they also need to be able to work well in teams, to solve problems creatively, to communicate clearly. And those are all people skills.
Right. So it's not just about, like, coding the robots. It's about understanding how those robots fit into a larger human system.
Exactly. And it all comes back to the importance of lifelong learning.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just, learn one skill and think, okay, I'm set for life.
Right.
You've got to be flexible, adaptable, constantly learning and growing.
So how do people stay ahead of the curve? With all these changes happening so fast, where do you even begin?
That's a great question. And it's something that a lot of people are trying to figure out. The report doesn't give any magic solutions.
Right.
But it does highlight some key strategies that I think our listeners will find helpful.
Okay, well, let's get into those strategies. What are some concrete steps people can take to prepare for this future of work?
Well, first and foremost, be proactive. Don't wait until, your job is automated or your skills are outdated before you start thinking about upskilling or reskilling. Stay informed about the trends in your industry. Explore new technologies. Be willing to try new ways of working.
Like, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, right?
Right.
But the second best time is today.
Exactly.
So don't wait until it's too late to start investing in your future.
And don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone a little bit. Experiment with online courses, maybe attend some industry events, connect with people in different fields.
Right.
Maybe even consider a mentor.
Yeah, good idea.
You never know where you might find your next opportunity or maybe even spark a new passion.
So be curious, be open, be willing to adapt.
Yeah. See change as an opportunity for growth rather than something to be afraid of.
I like that.
Yeah.
What other advice does the report offer?
Well, one thing they emphasize is that this isn't just an individual responsibility.
Okay.
Employers, they have a really crucial role to play here, too.
Oh, yeah.
They really stress how important it is for companies to invest in employee training and development.
So it's not just about like giving employees access to the latest software or equipment. It's about creating a whole culture of learning and growth within the organization.
Exactly. It's a win-win. Employees who are constantly learning and developing, they're more valuable to their employers.
Of course.
And employers who invest in their people, they're more likely to attract and keep those top talents.
Makes sense. What other strategies does the report recommend?
Well, one of the big themes is the need for collaboration.
Okay.
Like addressing these challenges and also taking advantage of the opportunities. It's going to take partnerships between businesses, governments, educational institutions, maybe even nonprofits. We all need to work together to make sure that everyone has a fair shot at succeeding in this future of work.
It's like that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Right.
We all benefit when we work together to create something that's more inclusive and equitable for everyone.
Exactly. And that includes, addressing those systemic inequalities we were talking about earlier. We need to make sure that training and reskilling programs are available to everyone, regardless of their income, their education, their gender, their race. We need to create a system that provides everyone with equal opportunity.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
From the specific jobs that are growing and shrinking to the broader skills that are going to be in high demand,
Right.
and the importance of lifelong learning. But the report also gets into some really specific strategies that employers can actually use to adapt to these changes, right?
You're right. One key strategy is to kind of move away from those traditional hiring practices, the ones that focus on really narrow job descriptions and, very specific credentials. Instead, employers need to start hiring for potential.
Hiring for potential. What does that even mean?
It means looking for those transferable skills. So instead of looking for someone who has done the exact same job before, you're looking for someone who has the aptitude and the willingness to learn new things.
So it's like, instead of just looking at what someone has done in the past,
Right.
You're looking at what they're capable of doing in the future.
Exactly. It means looking beyond those resumes and degrees. Really trying to assess candidates based on their problem-solving skills, communication skills, adaptability, their willingness to embrace new technologies.
So it's recognizing that someone who's been really successful in one field, they might have the potential to be really successful in another field, even if their past experience doesn't perfectly match the job description.
Right. And this also means being more open to hiring from those non-traditional talent pools.
Okay, so who are we talking about here?
Think about veterans, people with disabilities, individuals who've been incarcerated, people returning to the workforce after taking time off to care for family.
Right.
There's this huge pool of talent out there that often gets overlooked by traditional hiring practices.
So it's about like thinking outside the box.
Oh, exactly.
Being willing to give people a chance, even if they don't fit that traditional mold.
Exactly. And it's not just about hiring. It's also about providing ongoing training and development opportunities once people are hired.
Okay.
It's about creating that culture of continuous learning where employees are encouraged to experiment, take on new challenges, and to develop their skills in a supportive environment.
So it's about investing in your people, not just in your technology.
Exactly. And it also means rethinking those traditional career paths.
Oh, okay. How so?
Well, in the past, it was normal to stay with the same company or even in the same field for your whole career. But in this new work landscape, that's becoming, less and less realistic.
Yeah, it's almost like instead of climbing a corporate ladder, you're navigating a jungle gym of opportunities.
I love that analogy. It's about being open to those lateral moves, maybe exploring different industries or even, starting your own business.
It's about being more flexible, taking ownership of your own professional development.
Exactly. And that means being proactive about your own learning. Don't wait for your employer to provide all the training you need.
Right.
There are tons of resources out there, free courses online, Coursera, things like that.
Yeah.
Boot camps that teach those in-demand skills in just a few weeks.
Yeah, there's so much out there if you know where to look.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of networking either.
Networking is always a good idea.
It is. Connect with people in different fields, go to industry events, be open to learning from others.
Great advice.
And finally, and maybe this is the most important thing, don't be afraid to embrace the unknown.
The unknown. That's a little scary, isn't it?
It can be, but it's also exciting. The future of work, it's uncertain.
Right.
But that doesn't mean it has to be scary. By staying informed, being adaptable, and always learning, you can not just survive, but thrive in this new world of work.
It's about seeing change not as a threat, but as a challenge.
Exactly.
And as an opportunity.
Yeah.
It's about being the architect of your own future.
Exactly. And on that note, I think it's time for a quick break. Let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've discussed, and we'll come back and wrap things up and leave our listeners with some key takeaways to ponder.
Sounds good. We'll be back in a flash.
So we were talking about how the future of work isn't really about humans versus robots.
Right.
It's more about how we can work with technology. And to do that well, we need a pretty interesting mix of skills.
Yeah, we were just getting into that.
Yeah.
About how it's not enough to just have those hard tech skills.
Mm-hmm.
You also need, those strong people skills.
Exactly.
That empathy, that emotional intelligence.
It's true. And honestly, that mix is becoming more and more important in pretty much every field.
Okay, so help me understand this. What does that actually look like in practice? Let's pick with healthcare for a second.
Sure.
We talked about how it's a booming industry, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around how those social emotional skills,
Yeah.
Those softer skills, actually come into play when we're talking about, doctors and nurses and all those high-tech medical devices.
Yeah. Think about it this way. What makes a great healthcare professional?
Okay.
It's not just about, knowing the latest medical procedures or how to operate fancy equipment. It's about connecting with patients on a human level.
Right. Making them feel heard,
Okay.
understood, building trust, especially when they might be dealing with, a difficult diagnosis or a scary procedure.
Exactly. And no robot, no matter how smart or sophisticated it is, can replicate that genuine human connection.
That's a really good point.
But at the same time, like we said, healthcare is becoming increasingly digital. Electronic health records, telemedicine, remote monitoring, all of that requires a certain level of, tech savvy.
So healthcare workers need to be comfortable with both sides of the coin, so to speak.
Exactly. They need the high touch and the high tech. And it's really that combination that's going to make all the difference.
Okay, so that makes sense for healthcare. But what about other fields? Does this human tech combo apply there too?
Oh, absolutely. Think about sales, for example.
Okay.
It's always been a people-oriented profession, but it's also becoming more and more data-driven.
Yeah, you're right.
So salespeople, they need those traditional skills, building relationships, understanding customer needs, but they also need to be comfortable with all these online marketing platforms, social media analytics, all those CRM systems. It's a whole new world.
It's like they have to be tech-savvy relationship builder.
Precisely. And even in fields like manufacturing, where you might think automation would be eliminating the need for human workers.
Right.
It's actually creating a demand for a new type of worker, one who can bridge that gap between the human and the technological.
So what does that look like in a factory setting?
Well, think about the people who are designing those robots, building them, maintaining them.
Okay.
They need strong technical skills, obviously.
Yeah.
But they also need those soft skills. They need to be able to work effectively in teams, to solve problems creatively, to communicate clearly with their colleagues.
So even when we're surrounded by machines, those human skills are still essential.
Exactly. And this brings us back to, back to the importance of lifelong learning. In this rapidly changing work landscape, it's not enough to just learn one skill and think, okay, I'm good.
Right.
You have to be flexible, adaptable, and constantly learning and growing.
It's like your education doesn't end when you graduate.
Right.
It's a lifelong process.
Yeah.
But with everything changing so quickly, it's got to be hard to know where to even start.
I know, it can feel overwhelming. And this report, it doesn't offer some magic formula.
Yeah.
But it does suggest some pretty solid strategies that I think our listeners will find useful.
Okay, so what are some things people can do to to prepare themselves for this future of work?
Well, the first thing is just be proactive. Don't wait until your job is on the chopping block or your skills are completely outdated. Stay informed about the trends in your industry, experiment with new technologies, and don't be afraid to try new ways of working.
So it's like stay curious, stay engaged,
Exactly.
be open to new possibilities.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to get outside of your comfort zone. Take some online courses, go to industry events, connect with people who are doing different things. You never know what might spark a new interest or, even lead to your next big opportunity.
It's about like embracing change as a chance to learn and grow,
I like that.
not just something to be feared.
Absolutely. And another important point that the report makes is that this isn't just an individual responsibility.
Okay.
Employers, they have a huge role to play in this as well.
Okay.
They need to be investing in employee training and development.
So it's not just about giving people the latest gadgets. It's about creating a culture of learning within the company.
Exactly. It's about creating a workplace where people feel supported and encouraged to learn and grow.
It sounds like, it benefits everyone. Employees get new skills.
Mhm.
Employers get a more skilled workforce.
Precisely. It's a win-win. And another big theme that came up in the report was the need for collaboration. Like, to really address these challenges and take advantage of the opportunities, it's going to take a lot more than just individuals and companies doing their own thing. It's going to take partnerships between businesses, governments, educational institutions.
So everyone needs to be working together.
Everyone. We need to work together to make sure that, that everyone has the chance to thrive in this new economy. It's like, we all rise together, or we all sink together.
I like that. And that includes addressing those systemic inequalities we were talking about earlier.
Right.
Yeah.
Making sure that training and reskilling programs are accessible to everyone, no matter their income level, education background, gender, or race. We need to make sure that everyone has a fair shot.
It's about creating a future that's not just, technologically advanced, but also more just and equitable for everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the broad strokes of the future of work.
Yeah.
The jobs that are growing and shrinking, the skills that are going to be in high demand, the importance of, lifelong learning. But the report also dives into some really specific strategies that employers can use to adapt to all these changes, right?
It does. One of the key things they recommend is that employers move away from those traditional hiring practices.
Okay.
Those ones that focus on very specific job descriptions and credentials. Instead, they need to start hiring for potential. Hiring for potential. So what does that actually mean?
It means looking for those transferable skills. Instead of focusing on whether someone has done the exact same job before, look for someone who has the aptitude and the willingness to learn new things.
So look beyond the resume, look beyond, just the degrees and the titles.
Right.
And really try to see what someone is capable of.
Exactly. Try to assess them based on their problem-solving skills, their communication skills, how adaptable they are, how willing they are to embrace new technologies, that kind of stuff.
But looking for that spark, that potential for growth.
Exactly. And this also means being more open to hiring from those non-traditional talent pools.
Right.
Think about veterans, people with disabilities, individuals who have been incarcerated, people re-entering the workforce after taking time off to care for family. There's a lot of talent out there that's often overlooked.
It's about broadening your horizons.
Right.
Looking beyond those traditional markers of success and being willing to give people a chance.
And it's not just about hiring either. It's about providing ongoing training and development opportunities for employees once they're hired. Creating that culture of continuous learning, encouraging them to experiment, to take on new challenges, and to, just keep developing their skills.
It's about investing in people, not just in technology.
Exactly. And this also means rethinking those traditional career paths. In the past, people tended to stay with the same company or even in the same field for their entire careers.
Right.
But that's becoming, less and less common these days. It's more about being open to lateral moves, exploring different industries, maybe even starting your own business.
It's like instead of climbing a ladder, you're navigating a jungle gym of different opportunities.
I love that. It's about embracing a more flexible, dynamic approach to your career.
Yeah, and taking ownership of your own development.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that means, being proactive about your own learning. Don't wait for your employer to provide all the training you need. There are so many resources out there. Online courses, boot camps, you name it.
And don't underestimate the power of networking either. Get out there, talk to people, learn from others.
Absolutely. And finally, and this might be the most important piece of advice, don't be afraid to embrace the unknown. I know it can be scary, but it can also be incredibly exciting. The future of work is full of uncertainty, But by staying informed, being adaptable, and constantly learning, you can not only survive, but thrive.
It's about seeing change not as a threat, but as a challenge
Right.
and as an opportunity to create something new and better.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
It's empowering, isn't it? We have more control over our future than we often realize. So what you're saying is that the power to shape the future of work isn't just in the hands of like, some big corporation or some fancy AI. It's in our own hands.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that power and choosing to use it.
So it's not about being passive bystanders. It's about being active participants.
Exactly. And on that note, I think it's time for us to shift gears and start wrapping things up. We'll be back in a moment to share some final thoughts and key takeaways from our deep dive into the future of work.
All right, welcome back. I don't know about you, but all this talk about the future of work has got me thinking about my own career path.
Me too. It's like, it's one thing to read about these trends in a report, but it's another to really think about what they mean for you personally.
Exactly. And, we've been focusing on the U.S., but a lot of these trends we've been talking about, the automation, the shift in skills that's happening all over the world, it's a global phenomenon.
Right. It's not like we're in a bubble. What happens in one part of the world affects us all.
Exactly. So as we wrap things up here, I want to leave our listener with a question to think about. The McKinsey report focused on the U.S., but how might these global trends affect your own career and life choices, no matter where you are in the world? It's a really good question. Because even if you're not in the U.S., these trends are still going to have some kind of impact on you.
Right. So as you're thinking about that, I really encourage you to do a little personal inventory. What are your skills? What are you really passionate about? And how can you align those with the skills that are going to be in high demand in the years to come?
It's like a career checkup, but for your future self.
Exactly. And remember, lifelong learning, it's not just something we say because it sounds good. It's truly essential these days. So be curious, stay engaged, be open to new experiences. That's how you not only survive but thrive in this rapidly changing world.
It's not about being afraid of the future. It's about, being excited about it and being ready to adapt and learn and grow. And I think that's what we're really trying to get across here.
I think so too. This period of change, it's definitely disruptive, there's no doubt about that, but it also presents a real opportunity for us to create something better, something more inclusive, more equitable.
And that's what I'm holding on to, the possibility, the potential for positive change. It's not just about robots and jobs. It's about, it's about using this moment to create a future that works for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself. The future is already here. So embrace it, invest in yourself, and remember, you have the power to shape your own success.
Great advice. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the future of work. We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit inspiring. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.